Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the GuideWell Connect Insights Lounge. We're here at day 3 of the AHIP Institute and Expo. My name is Kate Warnock, and I have another distinguished guest joining us, Dr. Joe Selby. Dr. Selby, welcome to the interview.
Good to be here.
So, Dr. Selby, of course, you are the Executive Director of PCORI. PCORI stands for the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. All right, so Dr. Selby, when you address realizing the full value of comparative effectiveness research, CER, what should we listen for?
Well, I think if we want to get the full value out of CER, you need to listen for, you need to hear that the question that's being addressed, the comparison that's being studied, came to you from somebody who needs an answer, somebody who's at work making a decision. It might be the patient. It may be a patient organization. It might be the clinician. It may be a health plan, a purchaser. It may be a policymaker. But this is research designed to aid stakeholders in making decisions. CER is not research that's designed to understand the basic biology of health and illness, nor to develop a new drug. It's research to address questions. So that's hallmark number 1 of good CER. The second hallmark is that it comes close to measuring, attempts to measure the whole range of outcomes that influence decision-making. So 2 drugs. One of them extends life by 4 months in a serious disease like cancer, let's say. That's an important thing to know. Patients want to know that. But they also want to know, how does it make me feel? Does it affect my ability to function? Does it cause or relieve symptoms that I have? So to make the decision, a patient that only knows that one drug extends life by 4 months and no other information is not well served, can't make the good decision. So hallmark number 2 is it considers a range of outcomes. And I would say hallmark number 3 is what is called attention to treatment heterogeneity. That's a big phrase, but I think you're going to be hearing more of it. It simply means that whether one treatment is better than another is not something that holds for all people under all circumstances. So take people who are under 65, still active, working, and compare that to people who are 85. They have the same condition. They both need treatment. But the same treatment that is right, that works for a 60-something may not work for an 85-year-old. There may be another treatment that works better, actually, more satisfying, more satisfactory for the range of outcomes for that group. So understanding what works for whom is the third hallmark that you want to see in good CER.
So it sounds to me like the research, as you said, you're answering questions that have been served up by a population with a need. And so you're very, very focused then in the kind of projects and programs that you take on, aren't you?
It's very practical research. Yeah. The thing that PCORI wants to know the most is that if we do this piece of research, it's actually likely to change practice and improve outcomes.
Okay.
So we don't want to get to the end of the line and say, that was interesting. That leads us to the next question. We'd like not to be at that point. Okay. More research is needed is a popular phrase, and it'll always be true, but we don't want it said necessarily in the context of looking at the findings from our studies.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, Dr. Selby, I want to get your thoughts on something that Dr. Atul Gawande had stated. He said this: the American healthcare system is going from being designed to deliver on pills and procedures to being designed to deliver on outcomes. That is a dramatic transformation, and we don't know how to do it. Do you agree or disagree with this statement, and how do we close the gap?
I think I largely agree.
Okay.
Doctors and clinicians and delivery systems have always really set up shop and gone into the practice in order to improve patient outcomes. So there's a sense in which it's getting back to what's natural. We went through a long period where we were able to measure what doctors did, count off, tick off, how many times, what fraction of the time they did this or that good thing. But there's deep knowledge that doesn't always translate to better outcomes. And in some cases it does. And in fact, this approach has made a lot of improvement over the years in, guess what, patient outcomes. So a focus on processes has gotten us this far, but it's had some perverse side effects And we think we're ready, particularly with the emergence of the electronic health record, the appreciation that we oftentimes need to ask patients how they're doing. We've got more outcomes now. And we think we've gotten to the point where we can go directly to the outcomes, which is the natural place. And it will actually, from the point of view of the clinician, it will move that clinician from feeling like he or she has to practice to the test and check off the box, to he and she can really use all the knowledge they have to get the best outcomes for patients.
It's a very empowered position then.
It is an empowering position.
Right, right. Which is obviously something we want to hear more about in our provider practices. So, all right, next question for you, Dr. Selby. How does PCORI level the playing field for established therapies and procedures against big money that funds novel and unproven treatments? How do you ensure the patient voice doesn't get lost along the way?
Well, I like the question a lot. And I think if we go back to this same notion that we're in this for patients, patients have a lot of concerns, outcomes are important, then curiously, what we have very little of on day one when a new treatment, whether it's a drug or a procedure or a device or an approach to population disease management, what we don't have on day one is how did this affect the range of patient outcomes? So I think that there is a place for comparative effectiveness research right here in the middle of assessing value of new therapies. And it's a very patient-centered approach. One way to look at it is value should be defined in terms of what patients value. Simple, sounds simple.
Simple, right, but I think that so many patient communities and conversations that I follow on social media, they're clamoring to have a voice, a seat at the table, what gets funded, where new therapies and research dollars go, and there's such a disconnect. So it seems to me like PCORI exists to really bridge that gap.
I think what we've seen is that the patients are not only ready to participate, but my goodness, they are prepared.
Yes.
And they play their role, and they play it responsibly. And it's invigorating to researchers and clinicians and others to have them alongside at the table. It's nothing like getting patients in the room along with, for example, manufacturers and payers and clinicians and saying, okay, in the name of patients, what's the key question that we need to address? What's the information we need? It changes the conversation.
Right, right. And more of those conversations certainly need to be held.
Yes.
All right, our final question for you. Well, we have a couple more, actually, Dr. Selby.
Good.
I'm not going to let you go. So what might health plans extrapolate from PCORI's ability to engage patients in the research process? You just talked about bringing them to the table, making sure that they're the right players around the table. A health plan, obviously, as we hear here at AHIP, trying to pivot much more towards being consumer focused. You have so much experience. Your entire institute includes the word patient in its name. So being patient first, what can a health plan learn from you?
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say, it was a blessing that PCORI got the name that it did. If it had been called the Comparative Effectiveness Research Institute, we would be probably, if I was here at all, we'd be talking about something probably different. So thank goodness that we did. What I say to health plans is don't be shy. Get out there and invite your members, your enrollees, the patients who you cover, to the table. I would say take care to bring their clinicians along. Get them all in the room at the same time. It may take some trust building. I think that having worked in a health plan for many years at Kaiser Permanente, which is both a health plan and a delivery system, of course, but nonetheless, I've seen that there was a period we went through where health plans were not good at talking to their members, particularly about research and about research needs and about everything from whether we actually know what's best for you, oftentimes we don't, to issues around cost and value. So I would say don't be shy, count on the fact that there's going to be a rewarding experience for you, and think seriously about having the patient's clinicians in the room at the same time. That's the way to build trust.
Wonderful advice. Wonderful advice. Okay, now we have our final question for you. Okay, so another topic that really has been covered here is digital health. I was wondering if you could tell us, how might digital health impact what PCORI funds, and do you anticipate other trends that could be as disruptive to the industry?
Well, digital health is a very interesting development, totally in sync with what we've been talking about in terms of making healthcare and research more patient-centered. It provides avenues for patients to be more involved with their clinicians and or the researchers. It offers a big expansion in the number of outcomes we can study. It's not a panacea. It's not the only answer, either in the care realm or in the research world. But it is certainly a good step in the right direction. We fund a lot of research on digital health, apps that improve self-care, apps that improve engagement between patients and their clinicians, apps that collect outcomes that are fed to clinicians, apps that collect outcomes that are used in research. So the only thing I'll say is that to the extent that apps are used differentially by different parts of our population, we have that old treatment heterogeneity issue with us again. And there is a risk that if these apps aren't designed and made accessible to the entire population, that, like many new innovations, they can actually contribute to at least transient disparities, worsening of disparities. So I think that app developers, I suspect that many of them appreciate this, but we have to understand how we make those apps or whatever digital health innovation they're working on accessible and used by the whole population.
So obviously, what a wonderful role then that PCORI plays in helping with those testing and the insights that you no doubt provide those developers who may have even come from outside the health industry. We've spoken to a number of solutions here. Folks who really have these new novel concepts, but they didn't come from the health industry. So wonderful that you provide that guidance, for that treatment. Heterogeneity. Heterogeneity.
Yes.
Right. So.
Maybe this won't slip into the lexicon. Maybe we'll have to.
But obviously, what you're saying is certainly an easy concept to grasp. It should work for more than just a niche population for real uptake and to make a difference. It should impact as many people as possible.
And in many cases, one size does not fit all.
Right.
And that's kind of the underlying message that one size doesn't fit all for most medical treatments and interventions. And that has both the understanding that and appreciating it and looking for it means both that we have a better chance of getting the right treatment to the right person and also not wasting resources or exposing patients to risks if the evidence actually says that it's not going to help.
Right. Well, so many wonderful conversations that I know PCORI is helping people to have at the most important level. But thank you so much for the conversation that you've had with us here today, Dr. Selby.
It's a pleasure. And if I might just invite all who are watching to check out the PCORI website. It's just www.pcori.org, and find ways to get involved with us. We have numerous advisory panels. We have numerous work groups. We have opportunities to be reviewers of grant applications. And so whether you're a patient or a clinician or a researcher, we'd love to hear from you and get involved with you.
Oh, even better. So, well, again, thank you for that call to action. And I certainly encourage a lot of people to go to it's PCORI.org. So thank you so much, Dr. Selby.
Thanks, Kate. A pleasure.
All right. This is Kate Warnock. Thanks again for joining us here at the GuideWell Connect Insights Lounge.